Welcome back. I'm delighted. As promised, I'm here with Stephen Manderson, better known as the rapper and artist Prof Green. Nice to see you.
How you doing?
I don't know if you were listening in as we were chatting earlier. We talked a lot about racial inequalities on the show. I mean, you spend a lot of time with young people and a lot of work with them. Do you think there's enough focus on class disparities these days, as well as, you know, racial and gender issues when it comes to tackling inequalities?
I wouldn't want to discredit either, but I think if we were to
It's not discrediting, it's just not...
but just... I'm not a politician, be nice to me.
Sorry, I'm trying to be nice.
But I think if you look at class and race issues, and if we solve class issues, do we solve race issues? No, we don't, which I think is quite telling.
But, you know, if you look at, you know, things like underperformance in schools, quite a lot of that is now from young white boys from sort of basically no hope households.
Yeah,
are we doing enough to help them?
Probably not, definitely not. But they're the same people whose anger is just, but is being leveraged by a government that's never done anything for them and never will.
Yeah.
And I think politics will always be divisive because of left or right, but I think it's particularly divisive at the moment. And it's a dangerous game.
OK, so you pointed... We've talked a lot about how divisive politics is at the moment, but it is also striking that particularly in working-class areas in the Midlands and the North, there's been a shift away from the traditional party of the working-class, Labour, towards Boris Johnson's Tory party. Do you understand what's going on there?
Yeah, empty promises. I did a documentary on white working-class boys, men, because of this issue, because I was hearing opinions from people that I didn't quite understand because I grew up in an incredibly diverse community. So the opinions largely didn't make sense to me. And when I spoke to him, you know, I remember when we shot, we had to do a taster for Channel 4, which was the channel the documentary was on. And I spoke to a kid who was like, you know, all the Polish people are taking all of the work on the building sites. And I was like, OK, but is the contractor British? And he was like, well, yeah. And I go, so who's the problem here? They're working for whatever they can get, but they're being exploited by a British contractor. Yeah. So who's your problem actually with? Yeah. And also, who do you have more in common with? Yeah. Your middle-class counterpart, you know, or someone who's from a different background who's of the same class as you. And when you give people the opportunity to actually think about these things and to forge opinions, their answers are often very, very different from the opinions that they lift off the front page of a tabloid. Or indeed, in a silo on social media where they're only hearing one strand of opinion. An echo chamber, which we all know how influenced that is.
Now, in terms of another problem facing a particular group of young people, which is young musicians, I mean, it's been the most extraordinarily difficult time for young musicians the last 18 months. I mean, if you put yourself in the position of somebody who's starting out at the moment, how do you think you'd feel?
I think, firstly, I'd say Rishi Sunak is an absolute pleb.
What do you mean by that? Explain.
He's a moron. I think the idea of suggesting that people who have spent their lives working towards something should simply retrain is ridiculous. I think it's offensive, especially as the second largest exporter of music outside of America. It's ridiculous to suggest that we should all simply retrain, which, by the way, I filled in the form on the website and it suggested I become an actor, which is ridiculous because that's another industry which is part of the arts, which, by the way, I don't think any of us would have survived the last 18 months without the arts.
No, look, we all agree that the arts is tremendously... I mean,
I wouldn't have survived without binge watching.
I think he would say, you know, he was maybe a bit misunderstood on all of that. He also did, though, throw an enormous amount of money at arts organisations, at
specific parts of it, yeah. But when you look at what's happening to small venues, they're closing at an alarming rate. And if there's no small venues, where as an artist starting out did you start your career? These venues are incredibly important. It's easy to make the face of this whole thing an angry musician, i.e. me, right? And then go, oh, look at all these people like Ed Sheeran and Professor Green and Stormzy sitting back in their mansions and complaining. But we are not the majority of this industry. There are so many integral roles. You know, people's livelihoods have gone to absolute effing crap effing was quite a prominent word in the beginning of this show.
Yes.
Because of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people had speculatively put money into things that were due to happen based upon the reopening, which was supposed to happen on the 21st of June, which has now put them into further debt or closure. You know?
And we're all desperate for life to be a bit more normal, I agree. Please don't go away, because I just need, though, to go and Anushka first. You've got a couple of front pages for us.
Yeah, tomorrow's front pages. Look what's making the news. Nuclear Dom. Very clever headline there. And look at this in the Daily Telegraph. The return of holidays if you are vaccinated, suggesting that the government is looking to a plan that could allow more of us to go away.
I think that was the Blair plan, wasn't it? He got criticised because he was, you know, Blair suggesting that we'd be allowed holidays if we were vaccinated was thought of as, in some way, discriminating against people who weren't vaccinated. But could I just ask both of you, the other sort of issue that's around at the moment is this issue of whether care workers and NHS workers should be compulsorily, or should only be allowed to work if they're vaccinated. Dawn, Jeremy, what do you think?
Can I just say, though, it's not our plan whether a country accepts us, whether we're being vaccinated or not. It will be that country, the incoming country's
that's completely
plan.
right. It's more whether, I think it's about whether a country goes...
Whether they want
whether you're allowed back.
Yeah, whether they want us in their country or not.
It's so right.
In regards to care homes, I think this is a difficult topic in terms of course, vaccinated people do not spread the virus, it has been found. And so we want to make care homes as safe as possible because they haven't been. But I wouldn't vote for legislation that says that you are mandated to have a vaccination. I think that's a different thing, especially for people who are already working in the industry. I think if you're just starting in the industry and it's part of your contract, like doctors who have to have hepatitis B before they operate on somebody, that's very different from saying right now you're going to have to go and get a vaccination. I think we need to focus on educating people and encouraging people, especially those that work in care homes, to say, please get vaccinated.
Do you think it should be mandatory?
I do. And I think this is a genuinely very difficult issue because after the year we've had, I think we all think that care workers, NHS frontline workers are absolute heroes. The last thing you want to do is to mandate anything for them. However, in the end, you know, if my mum was in a care home and she'd kill me actually for even mentioning the suggestion, but if she was in a care home and she got COVID as a result of someone who had chosen for anything other than a religious or medical reason not to have the jab, I'd be pretty cross. And I think that you do have responsibilities to your patients, and I think doctors understand that. And I think that outside those medical or religious reasons, I think those responsibilities do have to come first.
But can I also say the people who died in the care homes, regardless of what Hancock said, they died because they were not tested before going into the care homes, and then that's how the coronavirus spread. Also, those people working in care homes were not given PPE, and so that's why they were able to spread the virus. In Brent, we made sure that all our care homes had PPE, and we had a very small number of deaths compared to anywhere else.
Do you have a view on mandatory vaccination?
I think... Oh, God, I love small questions. I think it's incredibly difficult. I think freedom of choice is incredibly... I think choice is important, but I also think there's a reason to make a contribution to society. If you're least at risk, it doesn't mean that you're not at risk of spreading the virus to someone who is more vulnerable. So I think there's an argument to both sides, really, to be honest.
It is. I mean, this is one of those very difficult... It's an ethical issue, I think, more than anything else. All I can say is that when you talk to, a bit like your experience, Jeremy, people who've got very vulnerable people at home, they are terrified about letting people look after their very vulnerable people if they haven't been vaccinated, and maybe their views need to be paramount. Now, sadly, that is